Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Trailer Park. Morgan is under the weather this evening, got a bit of a lung infection, so we hope she's feeling better soon and, is able to get back to school and stuff. But joining us this week, she missed last week, but back in full force tonight, is from Pennsylvania, Beth.
Howdy, howdy. Don't take a nap before your show. You'll sleep through it.
Yeah, well, you need to get a phone with a louder volume so when I text you, you can hear
it. Oh, I'm really good at ignoring it.
Well, that's okay. I was supposed to be on a hangout on Wednesday with the Great Debate Community, and I woke up 5 minutes before it started because I had shut off my alarm in my sleep.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I was supposed to be taking a nap, and I laid down at like 2, and I ended up actually falling asleep. I mean, sound asleep, and I was gone. I was like, ooh. I woke up at like 9. I'm like, well, so much for that show.
That's all right. Armin and I can talk up a storm anyway.
It's been a rough couple weeks.
I hear ya. But all the way from the Bruce city of Milwaukee, joining us once again this evening is Joe Magestro. Hello, Joe.
Hi, how you guys doing?
We're pretty good. How's life over there in Milwaukee?
Cold.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're used to it up in Canada, but
actually, I think I'm more south than you. No, actually, I'm on the same level. I'm about a straight shot over from you.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you're still familiar with it though, but no, it's going pretty well.
Excellent. I was going to say, how's life in Milwaukee? You're supposed to answer cheesy.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's a bad Canadian joke. Oh shit! So interesting. Last time we talked on the show, we talked briefly about your history and the church that you used to belong to and such. And irony of ironies, 2 days after we talked on the show, I was reading the CBC News. And a story came up, and I'm just going to share this for those who are watching. And those of you on the podcast, I'll describe it, so don't worry. But this popped up on my news app on my phone, and the headline is, Philippines-based church has the, quote, means and motivation to kill refugee if returned. Immigration Review Board, IRB. And I'm reading this going, Philippine-based church. No, couldn't be. And lo and behold, the entire story is about this gentleman's struggle with the Iglesia Ni Christo, or the INC, that Joe told us about having been a member of. So I'm like, no, you won't believe this shit. and we had already talked about doing a show about the church because we thought it was quite fascinating at the time, and now we're just like, wow, now we have to do a show.
Now we have to. Now it's relevant.
Absolutely. So you were a little surprised when I sent that to you.
Yeah, good timing.
I thought so. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, Trippin. We know there's an echo. Trippin's over in the chat. We know there's an echo, and I really don't know what's causing it. So my apologies. If we figure it out, we'll fix it.
Well, I think Joe just said something that's kind of important, is that now it's relevant. And with a lot of these breakaway sects or cults, whatever you want to call them, it's usually not until something like this or worse happens that these cults get into the news. Like, you know, Nixium being Keith Raniere. The one down in South Carolina where two girls passed in a vehicle. They don't know whether they were killed or starved to death or how, you know, and, you know, that's when they get in the news when something happens. But, I mean, there's thousands. They were saying that on average, I was just reading the other day, a little bit dated, but they were saying on average per year, and this is worldwide, 3,000 sects or cults are created each year. Most of them don't last more than a year, but that tells you, it's pervasive.
Yeah.
I mean, all three of us could go out and form our own little cult.
Right.
I mean, I'm actually watching somebody that I've interviewed on a previous show, who basically, when he started, had maybe 55 followers. He's now well over 1,000.
Wow.
Jeez.
And the shit he spews is woogity boogity ancient alien type crap and Nephilim and Illuminati bullshit. But people are eating it up. So
Yeah.
that's why when you have people leaving cults like Joe did, it's important to listen to what they're saying.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to talk a little bit about the story first, and then we'll get into a bit more about Joe's experience.
Sure.
But the story, this gentleman, he's a Philippine national who belonged to the INC, and at some point he began doubting the church teaching and decided that he no longer wanted to be a member. And he immediately began to be persecuted by the church, and he had been threatened. And the one thing, and he used this as evidence in his immigration hearing, and I think I'll pull up a picture here from the article. He had this picture. It's a photo of him and his wife and his young child, who was only a year old. And it says, March 7th, 2016, say goodbye. And it has a picture, the picture of the child has been X'd out with a big red X. So, in other words, they were threatening the life of his baby. And it's insane. And he actually is telling stories of other people that he was aware of that had been killed in the Philippines. Now, there's no way for us to corroborate any of that, and it did say so. But our immigration board was only looking for credible evidence that he himself was in danger, because they were looking to whether they would accept his refugee claim or not. So they did indeed accept his refugee claim based on the evidence that he presented. And now his family is in hiding somewhere in Asia, and he's hoping to be able to bring them over to Canada. So
Wait, only... Oh, I missed that part. I thought his family was with him.
No.
Yay. I missed that when I read it initially.
Yeah.
And it's quite ridiculous. Like his story too. If your viewers have a chance, they should definitely read this article, because this is in my opinion, a groundbreaking article for this church. I actually brought it up to someone who's still in the church, but they're a closeted atheist. And I think he kind of described it perfectly, where he said, yep, people outside the church aren't, they don't think they're just crazy people anymore. They think that there's actually some danger that's going along with this church now, and that we need to deal with this stuff. I think Menorca, the guy who this article is about, he was an unordained minister and in the Philippines, and within the Philippines in this church, there's this hierarchical structure of the executive ministers, district offices, going all the way down to your local church minister. So recently within this church, there has been a ton of, we'll say, corruption and just like scamming of the church members, and there's been doubt of like how good the church executives actually are and what they're doing with the money of church funds. So this thing has been going absolutely crazy while the entire time the executive minister has been on a power trip lately. So the idea of him having to flee is no joke because this guy will not be threatened by anyone.
I'm wondering how much of that might tie into Duterte's craziness, the president of the Philippines.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a power trip dude too. I mean, he basically says just execute the drug dealers. I mean,
which is a whole other problem.
Yeah, that's a whole nother
right now.
Yeah, it's a whole. I'm wondering how much of it might tie into that, because I mean, or if there is even a tie-in.
Yeah, well, INC has been in trouble with the Philippine government for a while now because they've been accused of block voting as a church, basically saying that if you're a part of the INC, you have to vote for this candidate,
right?
Which is illegal in the Philippines. So,
as it's illegal here too, and
correct.
It still happens.
But
what
so
yeah,
go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say what I found interesting when you and I were discussing this a while ago. What you said about the lay preachers is that if you become ordained in the church, they basically own you because they are your sustenance. They provide your shelter, your food, your clothes, your transportation, everything. So for somebody in his position to leave is incredibly difficult.
Correct. And the idea of ministers, you live in a church-owned house, you drive a church-owned vehicle. The minister's wife is not permitted to work, so she can't be a breadwinner. And then on top of that, there's a lot of strict unwritten rules for the rest of the family of the church or of the ministers. So, for example, a lot of kids have to go with the minister when they travel to different states here in the United States here. So that messes up with their own work schedule. A lot of ministers' children don't go to school on their own because they have to be with the family because that's the expectation. So, yeah, they're completely at the mercy of this church.
They're expected to do everything as a complete family unit at all times.
Correct.
That's crazy. Like, who has time for that? And so when the children of a minister become adults, are they still held to that? Like, they're not allowed to have a life of their own, or what?
This is why it's an unwritten rule. There's no doctrine saying they have to. There have been children who have gone off and do their own thing, but they've been looked down upon for it. Right. It's kind of the idea that, especially since the father and the mother can't work outside of being the minister and the minister's wife, they take it as it's upon the children's responsibility to take care of their parents.
Oh, so they're expected to work, but expected to work towards the care of the parents, because eventually the minister is going to get too old to be preaching and doing
correct.
That. So they're just expected, because now, and I don't know, and I don't know if you know, because I don't think you've ever lived in the Philippines, but is there like an old age pension over there that the average person would get from working, or?
Not a clue.
Okay. Because I'm wondering then, if he's never worked in anything else. If there was such a thing, he was probably ineligible.
Yeah.
So it's the expectation would be that they're supposed to have. Is it sort of like evangelicals where you're supposed to have as many children as humanly possible, or are they a little more lax with that?
As many what?
Children.
Oh, no, they're more lax with that. They don't expect you to have children.
That's good.
But it's just they consider it a blessing at the same time, and the idea of you're passing on your genes to teach, God through someone else and bear fruit. That's the idea too. Is
right
when they try to talk about propagation and growing the church, they do put a large emphasis on growing membership, and it's almost like an expectation of every person has to have. I think it is. They have to at least bear one fruit or bring one new person into the church. So, as a easy way for people to get around the expectation is to have children.
Yeah, it's way easier to indoctrinate than to convert.
Correct.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big burden on a family, though, to have all those expectations, and I can imagine then that there's an expectation of certain ways of behavior for children, and like any kid who grew up and was wanted to do their own thing and not be involved with any religion, or was a quote troublemaker.
Oh yeah.
Well,
children.
Most of your PKs here in the U.S. are some of your more unruly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like I would assume that it would be very similar in the Philippines. And I know, going back to your pension question, I'm going to assume it's very similar to what we have here in the U.S., being that they were a colony of the U.S. for many years until they declared their independence or got their independence. But then, I mean, they're not the richest country in the world, so I can imagine basically when a minister within the church stops being able to preach, they're piss-ass poor.
Basically, but at the same time, it's also expectation from the church and from church members to take care of their families. The idea of becoming a minister is known as a grand, noble sacrifice. And it's expected upon everyone within that person's circle to take care of them because they're making that sacrifice.
Yeah.
But the problem is, since the church has such a strong hold on people, a lot of people in church are not the wealthiest. They also struggle with finances themselves. So you are having people who are literally in poverty trying to split up their funds to help other people who have literally no income.
Yeah. So,
well, there was a story out of, I believe it was Florida. This was a couple of years ago, where this family found out that their mother, who was on a fixed income, was donating pretty much all her money to the church, and the church minister was driving around in some fancy schmancy car, and they basically said, "Give my mother her money back." And the mom's like, "Stop, and they're like, "You're living in poverty. He's driving around this, $100,000 car. Oh, well, he's the minister. He deserves." It's like they twist that thinking where, and it, within a cult-like atmosphere. I mean, there's some. The church itself says it's not a cult, but some people outside the church consider it a cult. It's kind of a argument between the two as to whether it's a cult or is it a church, but my personal opinion is all churches are cults. So I solved that problem really easy.
So what kind of financial expectation is there from members? Like, do they have a set tithe or?
No, and that's actually one of their big selling points is they say that a lot of churches who do say there is a percentage tithe that you have to give are not living up to biblical standards. They do say that you have to give what's in your heart, which is good, I guess. But in a way, they pressure you to give so much, and literally they'll sell you on it every single week.
They encourage you to have a really, really big heart, right?
Correct. I mean, that's what it is. You know,
Yeah.
it's voluntary, but we're going to pressure the heck out of you to volunteer a lot.
Which is a lot like Scientology in a way, because yes, their courses have a certain price tag, but they're also pressured constantly to donate to various wings, or oh, you bought all the books and tapes already. Well, how about buying a whole other complete set to donate to the library? Like that's their thing. Yeah.
And going back to what Beth said about the woman living in poverty but still giving to her pastor, they do that too, exactly. Where I remember specifically where there was the earthquakes in Manila in the Philippines, and people were left homeless. They didn't have a penny to their name, and we were told a story about a man who lost everything, and it was such a great. And he is such a godly person that he woke up on Sunday and gave the remaining, shirt on his back to church.
Oh,
so, correct. And they hold him up as an idol. What you should be as a member of INC. They go. What is it? They do say a story about. Oh God, was it? I can't remember. But they talk about a story in the Bible verses where they say the members didn't have anything up to their name, but they gave like the only possessions they have to God because they were good Christians. So I want to say the Macedonians, but I don't think that's correct.
I'm like, okay, I understand the idea of encouraging people to be generous to the poor, but if you're the poor, how does that work? And if you die of starvation, what good are you to anyone, especially church?
They're correct. It's ridiculous.
It is. I just boggles my mind.
Well, that's the
say that
logic
was,
religion uses.
Yeah.
It's the idea that you're expendable at the end of the day. What, you're good only until your usefulness has run out. After that, we don't need you anymore. We'll find someone else that we can either indoctrinate or convince and BS their way to giving us more money.
So they are incredibly bureaucratic.
Yes.
They love bureaucracy, and different from what you might see in a North American church, where the pastor is kind of the central figure in the church, and there are synods and congresses and whatnot that are sort of a loosely based governing body with basic rules and that sort of thing. But really, when it comes down to it, the individual pastors are sort of the focal points of any given church. INC has something called the administration, and it sounds very totalitarian fascist.
Because it is. No, so I'll try to briefly describe the administration. So within Iglesia Ni Christo, the administration is anyone who holds power within the church. That could mean it starts with the executive minister, Eduardo V. Manalo, and they'll call him an executive minister like it's somehow democratic, but I mean it's literally a king. You only can get to that position via bloodline. That's it. So, what was his name? Felix Y. Manalo was the very first guy who founded the church. Then his son took over, Ranyo G. Manalo, and then his son Eduardo took it now. So from there, he has a lot of people who are around him. We'll consider like the entourage of the executive minister, as in like the chief financial officer, the chief apologetics guy, chief for propagation, chief for media, all that type of stuff. So they're all very closely knit, and then all sermons are done throughout this central core group of people. One thing that Iglesia Ni Christo prides himself on is unity. or at least they'll call it unity. The idea that everywhere in the world we all think the same way. You won't find you're right. You won't.
I'm just, I threw up a little in my mouth there.
So very different from like Baptist churches where it's all about individual church groups and communities. It's all about, one church in Toronto is going to be the exact same as a church in Texas. So every week there's 2 sermons every week, and each of those sermons are delivered the exact same by all around the world. From there,
so who writes sermons? Is there like the sermon writing guy somewhere?
It's in addition, yes, there is a head sermon writer, as well as in collaboration with the executive minister.
Oh wow!
So
these guys,
every church is preaching the same sermon.
Every church is preaching the same sermon, and then all ministers get trained to teach it as similar as they can.
So they
how fucking boring.
They would be taught to read it with like the same style and inflection and all of that.
It's weird because you can tell when an INC minister is talking because they literally have the exact same inflection and talking style as all the others.
Oh.
They literally teach you how to say what's on the paper.
That's fucking crazy. That's creepy as hell.
So I guess a good way of saying it is, hold on, I'll have to find it while I'm talking, but let me bring up one of their famous verses and I'll talk about the verse while I'm also giving this example. But the idea is when they're talking, they actually have a format of how they'll say it and how they'll introduce the Bible verse. So, for example, where did you go? There you are. So, for example, they'll say, so my brothers and sisters, we need to know why Iglesia Ni Christo is the true church of God. That is why in Acts 20:28, we read this. And then they all flip to Acts 20:28, and I'll read it for you exactly how they will read it. Keep watch over yourselves and all the flock of which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. Be shepherds of the church of God, and which he had bought with his own blood. And then they would reiterate the verse saying, so why do we know that the INC is prophesied throughout the church? Because in Acts 20:28, it says the church of, well, now here's the problem. I said church of God, but they'll claim it reads Church of Christ.
Right.
And that's because in this church, they'll go off of many different biblical versions and additions. So I read I think it was the NIV. I read the NIV version, which says Church of God. However, in the Lamsa version, it would read Church of Christ. And they'll always use the Lamsa version to say they're prophesied within the Bible.
So this goes back to what you were saying about people basically being expendable. If every minister is a carbon copy of every other minister, it literally would not matter who was in the pulpit.
Correct.
Oh, that's yikes. But that goes towards the sort of fascist regime model where the people are just cogs in the machinery, basically. Yep. You can just pick one out and replace it with another one that does what you want it to.
Yep, and that happens all the time. Like, say, for example, a minister has to go somewhere for a meeting. They can literally just have another minister come in and just give the same sermon because they're already trained on it.
And it's the same everywhere anyway.
Yep.
So do they have like spare ministers kicking around because if somebody like is sick or something, they'll be down one or?
They don't necessarily have spare ministers. What they will have are ministers who are ordained, but they'll take more administrative types of positions.
Okay.
And if need be, they can use those if they have to.
Okay. So they're like multi-talented clones.
Correct. But the other idea to think about is, so like I said, they do 2 services a week. Those services are not the same days within each church. So, for example, here in the Milwaukee locale, the 2 days of service are Thursday and Sunday, while some other locale may be a Wednesday and a Saturday. And the other reason why they do that is because also for the ministers, the idea is that if you miss a service, you can go to another locale and make it up on a different day. And that's also where rotating ministers can become much easier because they're not on the same day.
And so then as a parishioner, if you miss a service, you just go to another church and you literally will get exactly what you missed.
Yep. But the problem is there aren't a lot of locales in the area. So, for example, in Milwaukee, there's only one congregation in the entire state of Wisconsin. So if you miss that service, you're going down to Chicago. You're going down to Iowa because that's what you have to do.
And they'll know if you missed a service?
They do know because every church has an attendance procedure.
Wow.
So it's very similar to clocking in and out at work. You have your time card. You have to flip over your time card, and someone who's in the local administration of that locale will literally count to see who's here and who's not here.
Holy shit. So if you don't show up to your regular church, somebody's going to be watching for your name to pop up on the roster of another church.
Correct.
Fuck. So what happens if you actually miss a week and you don't make it up?
It depends who you are. So if you miss a week, you're really not going to go crazy about it, but you still can be reprimanded if you miss continuously.
Like, what if you end up in the hospital for a month, right? You're not gonna.
Correct. Correct. For those, there's nothing they can do about. So they make exceptions for those cases. A good idea is if it's preventable, you still go to church. So I knew people who literally risked their life. I'm sure coming from Canada, you get this too. They risked their lives driving in horrible snowstorms. That was completely stupid to drive in, because they could not afford to miss church because that was their expectation of them. It also raises their expectation when you have an office within the church. So, for example, if you are a deacon or if you are a part of the financial offices or if you're a choir member, because they take a lot of respect to choir members there, you can't perform the next week if you miss service.
So you're penalized, basically.
Correct.
Interesting. So if you're just a regular parishioner, though, and let's say your car broke down and you didn't go, and then you were like, I'm not going to fucking Chicago, like, would they chastise them somehow?
You would talk to. Right. It would be informal, at least the first time, but you would still get talked to.
Wow. So if somebody wanted, let's say, just an average Joe parishioner said, average Joe.
I know.
That, they because this is what a lot of ex-Mormons will do. And even in some cases, like Scientology doesn't really have church services, but their coursework. They'll just sort of quietly diminish their attendance and then stop altogether.
Well, it's interesting. So what they'll do, the church does know that they can't officially like drag you to church, at least in America. Philippines may be a different story, but at least in America, they can't do that. So what they do is they'll try to convince you to keep coming back. They rely heavily on family and peer pressure to do so. Mm-hmm. So obviously, if you miss enough services, they're going to expel you. Now, if you get expelled, your family may get reprimanded as well, because it's their responsibility to keep you in the church.
Like, that was what got me when we were talking about this before, because I mean, getting disfellowshipped or disconnected or whatnot, is harsh on its own. I mean, my ex Jehovah Witness friends, I mean, right now, my friend Phil, he's just had his first child, and his parents may never see that baby because he's been disfellowshipped. That's pretty damn harsh.
Yeah.
But when you hold, oh, and by the way, we're going to kick you out. We're going to tell you that the people, they're not allowed to associate. Oh, and we're going to punish your family on top of that.
Yep.
And what we were talking about, like, let's say your mom has a position as, like, say, a treasurer or something,
Yep.
which in the church would give that person more prestige.
Yep.
They'll get demoted because of something you did.
Yep, exactly. So what you'll end up seeing is, and this is kind of funny, their limit for actually taking action against someone for missing attendance is about a month. If you miss a whole month of services, now we're going to start the process of getting you out of church. So what people will do is they'll drag their, and I'm talking like fully aged kids, not like 13, like 25 to 30 or 40-year-olds are being dragged by their parents at least once a month to make sure they at least come to church so that they don't get penalized themselves.
Wow. That's just beyond the pale. Like, that really is fascist.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. No wonder it's difficult for people to leave. And then if you extend that to where the guy in the news story, you know, he's being physically threatened, and like what we said, they didn't threaten, we're going to beat the shit out of you or we're going to off you. No, we're going to go after your kid.
Yeah. You know, and
who's a toddler.
you're correct. But even then, this Menorca, the guy in the article, people from members from church literally took him hostage to make sure that he recanted his statement about the church. You know, someone threw a grenade in his car, which is ridiculous.
I mean, and thankfully, I think they realize they can't get away with that kind of shit in other countries. But
well, and then I don't know if you guys.
What it reminds me of is the situation with the Bangladeshi bloggers,
atheists, or secular.
Oh yeah.
Yes, the secular, because some of them have made it to the U.S. and Canada. I think primarily Canada, and they're still fearful for their lives.
Oh yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's like they don't know how far the arms of their bullshit reach.
Yeah. Well, let's take it to the status of the guy in Canada right now. You know, it was from America's perspective, Canada, like the most friendliest country on earth. Menorca had to go to the immigration board and say, while he was even just walking around in like public areas, people were taking pictures of him and sending it to him and saying with captions, "Watch your back."
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. This is in Canada.
Yeah.
So. Well,
and the bloggers, the Bangladeshi bloggers had issues like that. I know the one fellow, I think he, not long after he got to Canada, was out at some restaurant somewhere and realized that there were some Bangladeshi people watching him and kind of following him and stuff. And it's just,
oh, that's crazy.
Oh, I know. But yeah, to have Menorca getting followed here, with people taking pictures and shit is just, and
what I find. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say what I find fascinating about it, ignoring the whole cult question, is that these people claim to be Christian, but they're threatening his child. Boy, that's real Christ-like. And it kind of brings me to a question, but two questions. But let Deb go first before she forgets.
Oh, no, go ahead. It's too late. I already forgot.
Now you sound like me. Going with sounding Christian, I don't know how well versed you are on it.
Sure.
They're actually one of the non-Trinitarian groups. They don't believe in the Trinity or the deity of Christ. So how can they call themselves Christians?
Well,
I mean,
sure.
that's a debate. It's actually something I'm researching right now for something I'm hopefully going to get out, but I keep getting into the rabbit hole. So,
sure.
I mean, this goes back to an argument going back to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries with Arianism.
Yep. So the way they tried to describe it as is they consider Christ to be a messenger of God, much similar to Felix Manalo.
Yeah.
So the idea that they consider him, he's not God, but he's a man, but a very special man. So that's the idea where, yes, you're correct. They do not believe in the Trinity, but they still try to hold God up or hold Jesus up as someone, as a proponent of God, at least.
Yeah. Well, the going back to the whole Trinity thing, just to clarify, the Trinity doctrine within Christianity, mainstream Christian, is not a biblical doctrine. They try to make it one. And so they might be, this is something I'm looking into right now, trying to, I mean, I was raised as a Trinitarian. It's always been, was part of my belief when I was a believer. But the more I've been researching it lately and realizing, I mean, prior to my research was that, okay, I know it's a man-made doctrine, and they are able to do mental gymnastics to justify the doctrine of the Trinity, but getting into the nitty-gritty, especially when you consider the Johannine comma, which refers to 1 John 5, 7, and 8, was a later addition. It's one of the manuscript variants that many people think, wasn't in the original. And it goes back to Erasmus' interpretation or translation of the Bible. There's a whole big backstory to it. I won't get into that. I'll drive you all nuts. But it's like, so they actually might be accurate that, the Trinitarian doctrine is not supported biblically. And actually, I mean, we know that it was a man-made doctrine, and it was basically finalized in the 4th century.
Correct.
So I just find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I do agree with them on some things that they would consider, unbiblical. For example, I 100% agree with them that the Trinity is not a biblical doctrine.
Right.
And what they'll do actually is they'll constantly go into different debates. They just had one, I think it was South Dakota with, I think it was just a evangelical pastor basically describing the idea of the Trinity. But
I wonder if those are some of the debates I've been watching on YouTube, not realizing it was ink. I'm going to have to go back and look now.
No.
No. It didn't even dawn on me until just now. I've been watching some of the debates about how the people that are not Trinitarians are supporting their argument, while I haven't delved into the scriptural aspect of it, the theology of it, but I'm wondering now if some of the debates are actually coming from INC.
Well, and the funny thing about it is the last one they did, they really hyped this debate up as like, this is the time we're going to show everyone the truth. This is the time that we're going to, show everyone that, why the Trinity is completely BS. All right, cool. Beth, I'm sure you and I don't have doctorates in theology, but good Lord, I feel like we could probably show that the Trinity is not a biblical doctrine pretty easily. The interesting thing was, I would assume that INC would have won this because it's very easily historically, in my opinion, to show that the Trinity was added much later and that it was a man-made belief system later. But this guy was so bad at debating, he could have won, but he got his butt kicked so badly. And I'm just sitting here like, what the heck is happening? You just
I'm just now delving into the whole issue. I mean, it's something that I've always questioned, but I've never actually looked at it from an academic standpoint.
Yeah.
It's just something that I was raised with, so I never really questioned it. And by the time that now it really is kind of a moot point in a sense that I've been an atheist for damn near 25 years now.
So it doesn't really matter at this time.
So it doesn't matter, but it's I get into these rabbit holes because I'm working on a quote commentary of Genesis, and one of the issues that does come up is people use Genesis 1:2.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit of God was over the void. I can't remember the exact quote. Brain fart. And a lot of people interpret Genesis 1:2 as the first indication of the Trinity. What they forget is that ruach can just mean mighty wind, with no supernatural connotation, and that's actually how it's used in that verse. It's not talking about the Trinity. So that got me down a rabbit hole. And I just find it funny because here I am as an atheist questioning a doctrine of the church, and it really, on a personal level, doesn't really mean anything as far as my atheism goes. And I've been listening to these debates, and it's like, and even listening to the non-Trinitarians argue their point, it's like, you guys are stupid. It's like, it's so much mental gymnastics in some of, I mean, there's one that I watched that was definitely coming from a Messianic Judaic aspect, and or there was another one I watched from a Black Jewish. And it's like, wow. It's fascinating to delve into some of the doctrines of these non-mainstream sects, because they're like denying the deed of Christ, or the INC being the only one true church founded by Jesus Christ. Well, where's your fucking proof?
Yeah,
you're using the Bible. You're using the Bible as your claim, and it's that whole circular reasoning thing.
Yep.
I think that's what's so frustrating, And then they only believe in baptism by immersion. Well, what's wrong with sprinkling a little water on the head?
Absolutely.
And even talking about the baptism thing is, they also believe that baptizing infants is immoral. You're supposed to come into some type of age of reason before you become baptized, because that's when you accept God. And the idea of baptism by immersion is you're supposed to be fully enveloped so you can be born again.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, you're debating like magical procedures, but that's their reasoning, at least why.
Well, that's actually I know within the one Baptist church I was associated, they didn't believe by baptism by immersion, but I was raised Missouri Synod Lutheran, and you got baptized as a baby, because and that whole debate. It's fascinating that they're, like you said, they're arguing magical powers.
Mm-hmm.
It's
but to them, also being baptized is a very bureaucratic thing. There's a whole procedure for it where you have to basically apply to become baptized after you go through your indoctrination period. And then what they'll do is, I think they do it once a month. There's a special service they'll do, and anyone who is baptized will all come together from around the district to undergo baptism. And you basically put on like ceremonial white robes. You listen to a special baptism service. So,
yeah, the Pentecostal church I was involved with was like that. They actually had a whole, little pool, I'll call it. I don't know if there's a technical term for it, but
you're not like the elevation church that has the slide into the baptism.
No, this was it looked like an old one-room schoolhouse that was converted into a church, and this was when I was in college. So you think I live in the sticks now? It was a college town. Okay. The only thing there was the college. Once we were out of school, there was maybe 30 inhabitants.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it was like we had one red light. Well, we have 3. But it's like I just find it just intriguing, especially the hold they're beginning to have here in the U.S. I don't know about up in Canada, but that a church like this that has such bureaucratic bullshit can't even get a foothold here in the U.S. I find that. I mean, why do you think they started in the Philippines. Why do you think they've been able to get a foothold like here?
Well, you have to understand that just because they come to different countries does not mean that they're taking a lot of, we'll say, native-born citizens of those countries.
Right.
Yeah.
So for example, the vast majority of my locale, the older generations came over from the Philippines themselves, and then the remaining American-borns were their children. So I don't know if you remember that. That children's video where they went around the world, but it was still Filipinos all around the world.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, oh man, and that I was gonna get into the whole video side of this shit too. But Joe showed us a video last time after we were off the air, and it was horrible. It was these children sort of robotically singing about how they should always obey the administration, but it was, a couple of lines of song, and then they would sing it over and over again. And then it was like, and here we are in Germany, and they're all Filipino kids. And here we are in Africa, and they're all Filipino kids. And here we are.
Well, and that's what's amazing about it is, I gotta be honest, you guys. I've never been like the token white guy before. It's a weird experience. I'm not gonna lie, especially in America, to be a token white guy. But what would happen is, they love when people who are not Filipinos join their church, and they will like treat you so well, and they'll put you in front of all these cameras after, like for interviews and stuff, because they want to show everyone that they're not a Filipino-based church. They are the true church that just so happens to be Filipino.
No.
So I've been put in front of a camera so many times saying, "Can we talk to Joe? Can we talk to Joe? Because I really want to get his perspective on it." Because they get to put a white guy on there.
We want to know what the white guy thinks.
Literally, I'm not kidding.
So to make sure I am understanding, the growth of the church here in the U.S. is second generation. It's the kids
mostly. They do get Bible students. I mean, I was one at one point.
Yeah.
But those are pretty inconsistent. You do have to realize, for all the listeners, that they don't send out or release official church numbers around the world. So the idea of knowing how many people they actually have in the United States is a complete mystery. But correct. There are very few. I think in my locale, other than me, there was probably 2, maybe 3 other people who were not natively born either in the Philippines and came over here, or who had families who were born into the church.
Okay.
Yeah, because I while we were talking, I pulled up a couple of their video channels, and the one, it's INC Media News, is where that other here's how to deal with atheists video usually came from. And just sort of scrolling through the thumbnails, I'm like, this is all in English. Well, no, not entirely. I see there's one that isn't, a couple. But all of the thumbnails show Filipinos. And I'm thinking, I was reminiscent of the kids video as I was scrolling. I'm like, they're not even admitting through the thumbnails that there's anybody other than Filipinos in this church. Oh, wait, there's a black person.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's all over. I can't remember his name though, but they use him all over the place.
I think this is a woman.
And the other thing to think about too with this church is, yes, they do have congregations all around the world, but at the end of the day, they speak Tagalog. That's what they'll do. Is that their most holy of services will be in Tagalog. The hymns for that service have to be sung in Tagalog. The idea of having their central administration in the Philippines and the executive administration only speak Tagalog. So I don't know where they get this idea that they're not a Filipino-based church run, because they kind of treat it as, if you're Filipino, you're more holy. So even if you decide to become a minister, like one of us would be, we'd have to go to the Philippines and learn how to preach in Tagalog to actually become ordained.
Ooh, that's wow. That would be a little much. Because, I'm no linguist, but that looks like a hell of a complicated language to me.
Oh, yeah, and it is.
Oh, man. I think we figured out, because Beth just muted herself.
Yeah.
And we don't have an echo anymore.
Aha!
So.
It's all her fault.
Well, that's okay. While I was looking at the videos, because some of them auto played, there's a button on my mixer that prevents music like that from getting into the Hangout. So okay. I clicked that and then realized that it killed you guys' talking on Spreaker. So now I'm going to have to see. This is why I have my backup recording. I'm going to have to use it. But anyway.
There you go.
Yeah. So interesting. So the one channel, well, first of all, the one thing I was thinking when we were talking about the cloned ministers, is why are they not availing themselves of technology and just film one guy preaching the sermon and just have it be broadcast every week? Record it, distribute it to everybody digitally, and just be like, play that. Then they wouldn't have to pay anybody to be just one guy.
So first and foremost, they are technologically challenged.
Okay.
But they
not scrolling their videos.
They're getting better. They're getting a lot better. And actually, what they've been doing lately is they have been live streaming more, we'll say, special types of events. So, for example, what they'll do is, if the executive minister comes to America for some reason, they'll do a special church-run live stream from that congregation. And it's actually weirdly expected for a lot of other members from all around the country to go to their congregation and watch the live stream happen.
Oh, wow.
So
it just seemed to me it would make, if they want that much precision copying of the sermons, just do it, like, just record it, man. Like, that just seems to be a no-brainer to me, but then I don't believe in invisible sky daddies either, so but yeah, so they've got a couple I'm sure they actually probably have more channels, but I was noticing, so the one is called the INC Media News.
Well, INC Media is their big thing. So from INC Media, you have INC Media News. You have several of their shows all through INC Media. So where you saw the one black minister, I think he runs like 2 shows on INC Media.
Yeah, because the one that you sent me on how to deal with atheists had the black guy in it.
Okay, yeah.
And he's Canadian too.
There you go. Good representatives. The
black guy. But yeah, they've got some pretty slick looking stuff. I mean, that video is very slick looking. Although it reminded me of Scientology videos. Actually, it had a very similar feel to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like where they try to make themselves bigger than what they actually are, you know, and that's why they do this. That's why they try to have a huge media presence. What they just did recently was they started up a 24/7 INC radio channel.
Oh, damn.
Where what you do is they have something going on literally every single time or every single minute of every single day, and then just ends up cycling throughout the week where local congregations will end up doing like their own radio show for an hour. And just goes all around the world.
See, now that would solve the whole I miss church problem. You put all of the sermons on a secure website so that you have to log in. So if they want to track that you've actually watched it, you're going to have to, and there's ways that people can see whether somebody has watched the whole video. Like ads do that.
The problem with that is they do specifically believe that it is important to physically be in the church.
Okay.
So the idea, they do consider it blasphemous to say that you're a Christian and not attend a church.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the whole reinforcement of the indoctrination.
Yes.
That's kind of irritating. But I mean, it would solve all those problems if they just got rid of that idea. Just digitize.
They're only a couple of degrees off of that, you know.
Yeah. But these videos here, man, like, well, and then the other channel I found, which I mean, the sort of propaganda channel's bad enough, but then we find INC Kids channel.
Yeah.
Which is where that horrible video you showed me was from. And I'm just like, holy indoctrination Batman.
Yeah.
Wow. And they've got this character that looks like a lamb, which makes sense because sheep, lambs, Christ, all that shit, called Sweetie. And it's got these videos, and there's a lot of Sweetie says no to stuff videos. And then it's Sweetie's talking about patience and obedience, and obedience, of course. And I'm just like, this is totally awful. But the one that a couple of them that stuck out to me, like Sweetie says no to Halloween, while practically any sort of not really evangelical, but you know what I mean, any hardcore Christian group is like, ooh, Halloween's of the devil.
Well, and that's specifically what they'll do is they take hard stances against Halloween, Easter, Christmas, because they consider them all pagan holidays, which, I mean, they're not necessarily wrong. But I remember there's another show from INC Media that you may have seen called That's in the Bible. And,
no, I haven't seen that.
And basically it's this INC gotcha show saying, hey, don't argue with me. It's in the Bible. I'm not
a homophobe. It's God that says gay people are terrible.
Oh, they just did one on whether or not, you know, why aren't homosexuals allowed in the church? And it's so like back end, you know, slap you over with it, and they'll try to say, "Oh, we love them," but at the same time, they're broken. I'm like, "Oh, fuck off!" But there was a That's in the Bible kids version about Halloween, where what they did was they interviewed a bunch of kids from church, and you could totally tell like they were way too young to have any clue what they were saying, so they were just saying like whatever their parents told them to. But you had kids who were like 4 and 5 years old being asked, "So, do you like trick or treating?" Well, I would have liked to go, you know, but I know I can't. Well, would you have liked candy? Yeah, you know, but well, you know, what's more important, church or trick or treating? Well, I understand that we don't go trick or treating because that's not what the Bible says. You know, and it's like just 15 to 20 minutes of them doing that, and it's so frustrating.
Oh, I would be screaming at the damn
screen. It's bad.
Because I was gonna ask, like, the one is Sweetie says no to Christmas, and I remember we talked about it, but I'd forgotten the specific reason.
They are staunchly against Christmas. Within their church, there are only 3 official holidays that are celebrated. It is now for Americans, they have Thanksgiving, but it's not the American Thanksgiving. It's actually Thanksgiving for their church. The idea of giving thanks back to God and back to the church. So they do Thanksgiving twice a year. They do Thanksgiving on the New Year, which they treat as their Christmas. So when kids don't get presents for Christmas, they'll get it on New Year's instead. And then they also do Thanksgiving on the Sunday of July 27th, which was the day they founded the church. So it's kind of like saying this is the anniversary of the church, so this is a big, big deal. And then after that, they'll also celebrate. What is it? Communion? No, Holy Supper. So and they'll actually break out. Well, they don't do wine; they'll do grape juice and bread. But that's another big celebration for them, where everyone dresses up in white garbs, and it's all about purity and honesty and things like that.
Purity.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, yeah, and this other stuff they've got a drawing series teaching kids how to draw stuff.
Yeah.
I'm figuring that's full of Jesus crap in there too.
And they have like a bunch of other ways of trying to connect with the youth of the church, because what they'll do is, just to quickly give it a background. I think we talked about this before as well in the last one, but there are 3 hierarchical tiers within the church. There is the first off the Binhi, which is kids from 0 to 17 years old. Those are the official youth of the church. Then you move on to the Kadiwa, which means 18 and older, and you're not married. And then you have the Buklud, which is the highest tier of this hierarchical structure other than the administration. And that is you're 18-year-old and you are married.
Okay.
So what they do is they have So what they do is they have several different shows and podcasts to try to appeal to these younger audiences of the church. And they'll have special things about teen issues and stuff that's not even related to the church, but how would someone come at it from a church perspective? And I even remember one of the issues was, how do you deal with a bad relationship? What do you do? What do you expect out of a partner? And they were getting into like, when are you supposed to end it with a partner? And they were talking about how they need to try to fight their way through it, and they need to try to talk it out and be okay. And then someone just brought up, well, I guess what if they decide to leave the church? Immediately, like, oh no, get rid of them. Break it off right away. I'm like, whoa, that took a turn.
Yeah.
But they'll do this all the time because they know that their community is isolated, because you're not really expected to have a lot of friends outside of church. So they'll have district-wide Kadiwa-related events. They'll do things called Sports Fest, where all the districts come together and just play like their little local Olympics. They have just general social gatherings for Kadiwa and Binhi. They have family fun days. And they get people from all around the country to come to these things, because that's kind of what it's expected.
Right, because I imagine their numbers in any one locale would be so small that they would have to bring in, because they never want to look puny.
Correct. One thing that INC is really good at is coming out, like for events or whatnot. There was an article after, Hurricane Sandy, I think it was, that hit New York. I can't remember.
Yeah, that was Sandy.
Okay, so the INC wanted to get a bunch of people out to help with relief for Hurricane Sandy, and they got 150,000 people to show up in New York, all wearing INC garb, saying, hey, we're here, we're INC, and we're going to do something. Which, it's one of those things where it's not, they could do a lot worse things, so I'm not going to necessarily complain about it, but at the same time, like, that's the control they have over their members.
Yeah. Oh damn! There's a title I just scrolled by. INC kids, we're INC for life. Ugh.
There's a new I mean, I'll have to try to find it, but there's a new video that they try to spread around lately. I think it's called like I'm a member of the Church of Christ or something like that. And it's a very bad like pop song that they're trying to basically get into everyone's head, and it's catchy, unfortunately, but this is what they'll do is they'll try to do whatever they can to appease their base. Oh, and I just found it. I think I'll send it to you. So
fun.
They'll try to get your attention with all these very catchy songs and fun stuff, saying, "Oh yeah, it's a good thing that I'm part of the great community here in church," and they'll completely ignore all the bad things that come after it.
Of course, Beth, you had something to say? I told her she was the source of the echo, so she's been keeping muted until she wanted to say something. You're still muted.
Still muted.
There we go.
Yeah, my button just. Where the hell is it? No, I was just. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, I remember. Going back to the whole thing about the hurricane. Please tell me they weren't handing out
Oh.
Go ahead. I think she froze.
What was it? Was it Billy Graham or the Scientologist or something? But they went to Haiti.
Oh,
and they handed out electronic versions of the Bible. It's like they have no power.
Oh, gee. No, I mean, I'm almost positive they had stuff to hand out to people while they were there. They don't do anything for charity's sake. They'll do it for propagation's sake.
Which is very Scientology of them.
Well, that's what Franklin Graham organization. Nothing that's charity. It's all for them. It's how many souls can we win for? They were talking that they were invited. I can't remember to which tragedy it was, and it's like a couple of people that were survivors were like, we didn't invite them. Who the fuck invited them? And it turned out that they invited them themselves.
Oh, for sure. And I also noticed a video in here. What was it? INC kids remember Brother Felix Manalo. So yep. Was that
Felix Manalo was the founder of the church.
Founder. Okay.
Yep.
So does he have like a special day? Because I know they do in like for Scientology. I think they do, and there's other ones that remember.
So weirdly enough, they don't do anything special. But the funny thing is, actually, Felix Manalo shares the same birthday as I do.
Oh no.
So the joke was when I was in church that I was like the prophecy child coming in.
Oh.
Right. So
white guy prophecy.
Right. Exactly. But no, as far as like an official day, they don't do it. They do have special, I don't want to call it festivities for their current executive minister's birthday. So right. What they'll do is it's expected from locales all over the world. What they'll do is they'll get the entire congregation together and they'll say, from the locale of Milwaukee, we just want to wish our executive minister, Eduardo Vivanel, and then they'll all say, happy birthday. And then they'll just drown their executive minister like in praises and, best wishes. So there isn't actually a realistic day they celebrate things on, but they'll definitely do things to praise their administration.
Okay, that's kind of icky, but this stuff is just ugh. Actually, I was gonna put on the one of these Sweetie videos for a second.
Go for it.
I'm not gonna watch all of them, but I'm curious. So,
Well, I always tell if your listeners want to hear it out.
Right.
if you want a time where you want to kill some time and you want to learn about someone who has some really crazy beliefs, watch some videos from INC Media. However, be ready because it's a rabbit hole. You keep watching it over and over again, and you keep getting angrier with every video. So you're going to watch it, and it's going to ruin your day. So be careful.
If you're an angry drinker, I would not drinking beforehand. If you're a happy drunk, then by all means. But yeah, or put a cage around your monitor, maybe. I don't know.
Please watch INC videos responsibly.
So here's Sweetie the lamb. So this is why Sweetie says no to Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. People celebrate this holiday on February 14th, and they celebrate it by giving their loved ones presents like chocolates, cards, stuffed animals, and flowers. But should you celebrate Valentine's Day?
No.
That's right. We shouldn't celebrate Valentine's Day. A long time ago, there was an ancient pagan festival called
There we go.
Lupercalia, and it was celebrated on February 15th. Lupercalia was a festival where people believed they cast out evil spirits from their city.
Okay, so first of all, wrong day. Wrong day. And how is casting out evil spirits, if you believe that shit, a bad thing? Okay.
I'm sorry. That's so funny. If you're gonna keep playing it.
Yeah, I was.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
But can we find Lupercalia anywhere in the Bible?
No.
Now, around the 5th century, many pagans joined the Roman Catholic Church.
Oh, yes. And we'll have to talk about that because they have a serious hate on for the Catholic Church.
Yeah. And anything that's Catholic related at all is a huge no-go.
Yep. So we know where this is going now.
Yeah, right.
And they still wanted to celebrate Lupercalia. So, the Roman Catholic Church decided to change the name of the Lupercalia Festival to St. Valentine's Day.
Okay, first of all, I don't even think that's true. I'll have to double check that. Oh, Beth is nodding. She says it is. Okay. Because I don't remember that shit. But we know
partially true because they St. Valentine's I can't remember the actual name did exist, and as far as the Catholic Church hijacking that part is kind of sort of true, but there's a lot more to it.
Okay, I was just saying, like, I don't think it's that cut and dried, but it is a kid's video.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see some more here.
And they celebrated on February 14th. So, is Valentine's Day found in the Bible?
No.
Around Valentine's Day, you can see drawings of a little boy with wings on cards and all the decorations. They call him Cupid. They believe he is the Roman god of love. Can Cupid be found in the Bible?
No.
It's nice to show people you love them. But as INC kids, we show our love all year round. We follow what our Almighty God tells us through the Bible, not just what everyone else is doing.
All right.
Oh, God. But that's generally the idea of it, where they'll say don't celebrate a holiday because of the past of that holiday. Like for example, I still celebrate Christmas. Doesn't mean that I'm all about the celebrations of Saturnalia back then, or even about the religious teachings of Christmas today. It's the same thing. Valentine's Day.
Most people wouldn't even know what any of those were.
Correct. Where they're saying Happy Valentine's Day. Here's some. They were saying, oh, they'll give them presents, chocolate, flowers. What's the harm in that? It's ridiculous.
I got my lovely bunch of roses.
Aww, there you go.
Yeah. But that's just I think they have that pre-recorded or some shit. It's like, although as a kid that would kind of be fun. Okay, all of you kids in the room, see, we got this big microphone. I want y'all to go no in the microphone. Oh damn! And I just want to say, Dave has showed up in the chat there, and he came in right when they were talking about the Catholic Church, and then they segued to Cupid, and he says, "Little boys, yep, I believe it." Oh man.
Yeah, they're very anti-Catholic in their views, and they don't hide it either. But going back to Cupid, some, not too many, but there are some proponents that propose that Cupid was actually one of the seraphim guarding the Garden of Eden when God kicked Adam and Eve out. As I said, it's all mental gymnastics when you get into mixing the paganism in with the Roman Catholic Church. And yeah, I call it the Hislop fallacy, going back to a book written by Alexander Hislop, where he delves into the whole anti-Catholic bullshit. And I mean, I don't agree with any of the doctrines within the Catholic Church, obviously, but I find it funny that they don't celebrate Christmas, because I've yet to get an answer to this question regarding Christianity in general. But I've asked a lot of believers, please show me where in the Bible they celebrated Christ's birth.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, where do they say you are to celebrate every year the day that Christ is born?
Correct.
And, I mean, granted, the supposed wise men showing up was supposed to be that's the verse primarily that's used, that they were celebrating his birth. Well, by the time they got there, he would have been 2 years old.
Yeah. But what I find interesting, because now the Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate any of these holidays as well for the same reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But INC, because I'm looking here on the kids channel,
yep,
and every month they have a video, INC kids February birthdays. So birthdays are apparently okay.
Correct.
Even though the J-Dubs would completely disagree with them on that.
Correct. And it's just something that just doesn't come up, where I think it was, to be completely honest, something they don't want to have to deal with. So.
Well, a lot of the original teachings from Manala was based on Seventh-day Adventist doctrine.
Yes.
Right.
So it has roots in Seventh-day Adventists, from my understanding, have some goofy reasons for not.
But yet INC has the quote Sabbath on Sunday, whereas seventh days are Saturday.
Well, technically, at this INC, there is no particular day the Sabbath takes place on. It's just whatever the day service happens to lend on for you.
Okay, so that's interesting. So so Sundays aren't everybody piles into a car and goes to church. It just, if your church has church on Sunday, you go.
Yep.
But if it's a day church, then Thursdays is Thursday. Oh, that's weird.
Well,
Yep.
that would scripturally, just on a plain reading would make sense, because on the seventh day God rested. Well, what day was that? What seventh day? Was it Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah.
So that would actually make more sense than every Sunday.
Yeah.
Or every Saturday or every Friday.
Yeah, I can see that. Interesting. Oh, I've got I thought it would be fun to take a quick look at we're INC for life.
Oh boy.
It'll be infuriating, but
Let's do it. I'm ready.
okay, here we go. Here we go.
Oh God, wait, it's in Northern Midwest. That's my district.
That's in the finale. We're INC for life because we are INC for life. Our INC kids on tour volunteers.
And we'll note they are all Filipino.
Life in this world may be tough and the road ahead.
Oh boy.
But when we close our eyes and pray to Him, we know we can face everything. When we call to Him, He is there. Our strength, our hope, He's everywhere. I know He guides us day and night. That's why we're INC for life. Sunday morning we wake up feeling excited to serve the Lord God. We all are united. We should never be sad. His words they uplift us. The children forever by His command. Listening closely, we all shall understand. As we hear His holy words, our faith will be strengthened. God made us His servants, yes, we are so blessed. Life in this world may be tough.
Okay, I want to know why the poor kid in the pink doesn't have a matching t-shirt. It's like, what did you do, you poor little thing? Oh, that's disgusting. This is like some traveling singing troupe, isn't it?
No, this is a festival that Great Lakes must have put on, and this must have been part of their entertainment. Because one thing that, well, without sounding too stereotypical, Filipinos in general really love to sing. But a lot of members in this church really love singing as part of their entertainment. So they'll constantly do things like this where they'll have performances, concert choirs, things like that come in and just sing a song about the church. This happens all the time.
Okay. I think that's enough of that shit. Yikes. So, and we talked about just briefly that they are really anti-Catholic. So do you know, Joe, what the reasoning behind that is, why they hate Catholics so much?
Multiple reasons. So they'll tell you, and they're not necessarily wrong, but it's basically because Catholics have so many unbiblical practices. That's where they come from, at least, where the idea of having priests, having celibacy, the idea of that, having saints is considered idols to them. So that's their perspective on it, is that because they consider the Catholic practices unholy. Now, what it actually is beyond that is the vast majority of the Philippines is Catholic.
Yeah,
Catholicism has a major hold upon the Philippines, and it's not the, woe and behold Catholics of, say the Midwest of America. They're pretty intense over there in the Philippines. So there's been a lot of skirmishes, a lot of fighting, not necessarily like wars or anything like that, but just a lot of butting heads between INC and Catholicism because that's their main competitor in the Philippines.
Okay, so if you're preaching that your competition is the evil, horror Babylon, et cetera, then it makes it less likely that anybody's going to be tempted by it, especially when they're prolific.
Correct.
And we all know how prolific Catholicism can be. Oh, man. It makes sense though. It's just a little extreme.
Yeah.
Like, did they teach you basically like the Catholic priests were like devil servants kind of thing, or?
Basically, it's kind of hard to pinpoint down. So they spend a lot of time, and I'm sure they still do on the Catholic Church. Probably at least, oh God, 1 to 2 sermons a month. They'll bring up the Catholic Church as part of their sermon.
Right.
When I was going through the indoctrination process, and I had to take my 28 lessons, one of them was specifically about the Catholic Church and why they're wrong in every single way.
Oh,
so,
man.
And it was one of the early lessons because they want to get it out there right away about how Catholicism is wrong.
And forgive me for not remembering, but what were you before you were INC?
Catholic.
That's what yeah. So that must have been a fun lesson for you.
Yeah, basically saying about how my family is going to burn in hell forever and they're all evil. It was interesting for me.
What I find funny is they specifically in the Philippines consider the Catholic Church competition. It's like, I don't think that's how it's supposed to work. But it just shows you how asinine religious belief, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, different sects of Hinduism or Buddhism, they all have their little beliefs. And if you don't believe this certain way, you're wrong. And they see it as a competition to see who can get more. It's like, you have a book, follow it.
Mm-hmm.
But,
so, was your family was probably a little bit, I don't know, freaked out about the whole thing at the time, or were they?
Yes, they were. So my mom is technically a Catholic, but she does not practice. She doesn't go to church, but she still believes in Christian virtue, at least. But she's a very smart woman, and for the most part, we lived a secular life.
Right. Okay.
So, and it from the minute that I started going to this church, it was not sitting right with her, to the point where it actually was really straining our relationship as a mother and son because she was so opposed to this. All the while my dad was at the time becoming a pastor of a non-denominational Christian church. So we had the Catholics saying her thing, the pastor in training saying his thing, and then the INC minister saying a completely opposite.
Oh, geez.
So that's what made it tough for me, is because all of my supposed sources for God were all contradicting each other. And that's where I had to take it upon myself to start researching about things and start reading the Bible for my own.
Mm-hmm. And then people wonder why we end up not believing it.
Correct. I do like to say, especially to people when I used to talk to them from INC, is that their church's existence is my best argument against the Christian God. Because I'll say, these people are good people for the most part. I mean, the administration, yeah, good luck with them. But as far as the general members go, they just want something good to happen. They want their life to have meaning. They want their life to have purpose, and they want to be good people at the end of the day. They're very misguided, but I can tell where their intentions are coming from. Now, the problem with that would be, why would God literally create the rest of the billions of people just to burn them for all eternity? If INC is true, it makes no sense. But at the same time, why would God let these incredibly devout people be misled? So, and it takes a lot of people from INC back, where I tell them it wasn't even because of your church, or it was because of your church that I'm an atheist now. I probably would have still been a Christian if it weren't for being exposed to INC.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of former cult members, and I know I agree with Beth that pretty much all religions are cults, but the culty cults
yeah,
people who leave culty cults do tend to end up being atheists because they're like, that's just beyond bullshit. And if people believe that and are suckered into it, then how can the rest of it be any different?
Correct.
You end up that's where you end up landing a lot of the time. I know of some ex cult members who went back to sort of some benign, like for instance, Leah Remini apparently went back to some sort of soft version of Catholicism, so I hear, but
okay.
Well, a lot of people, they say when they leave a cult, they will bounce around. So it's not unusual for them to delve back into some form of religion or cultic activity, just because that whole notion of meaning and purpose, they have a hard time accepting that, you can find meaning and purpose in your life without having a higher power or a god or goddess or whatever. And I think the more of us that are able to espouse our atheism and show that our lives have a meaning and purpose without God, the better. Like, there is a meme I saw today, I don't know if I remember it exactly, but it basically was, you've known me all my life and I just came out to you as an atheist and you're pissed off because I'm an atheist. I haven't changed.
Correct.
I've been an atheist for 20 years. I'm the same person I was 21 years ago. Well,
that's what's very and that's what's very interesting, even with my story too, is when I was dating and then engaged to my former fiance, her parents loved me, as when I was a part of a church, where they would constantly say how God blessed her for having such a great person come into her life and to, be someone who cared about her and helped her. And when I eventually got excommunicated, the dad forced me to sit down with him and explain what happened and why am I doing this. And I told him, I didn't even tell him I was an atheist at the time. I just said, I don't think I can agree with what the church does on moral grounds. And within that second, well, it was nice knowing you, and kicks me out of the house. Because to them, it doesn't matter if you're good or not. It doesn't matter if you're the same person. All that matters is what is your status within this church.
You're not falling in line with everyone else, therefore you're not just one.
Although what also is interesting is, I remember a story, and okay, I can't remember if I told you guys the story or not yet, but
that's okay.
Let me prefix it with this. What was the worst thing that you've ever been called, or the dumbest thing you've ever been called for being an atheist?
I know what you're gonna get. Yeah.
Okay.
I've probably, I think the worst thing was I've had a Christian call me a cum receptacle. I know.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
But that's okay.
So I'd like to I'd like to think that it was on stupid factor. I win the competition from where other people have been called names. It's the one thing I pride myself on. So as far as the story goes, is where I get a call from my fiance and she is crying into her phone and she is just saying, you have to help me. You have to help me. And I ask her, what's wrong? What's going on? And I can hear her dad screaming in the background about who knows. And she tells me, you have to talk to him. He's losing his mind. So the dad eventually hears her talking to me on the phone. And all I hear in the background is just saying, is that Joe? Put him on the phone. Put him on the phone. I need to ask him a question. So all I hear is my fiance say, fine, fine. And she puts me on speaker. And I hear him yell from across the room, Joe, you need to be honest with me right now. Are you or are you not a spy for the Catholic Church?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh my God. And It's ridiculous, but this is how their brains work. The idea is you can't just not believe in God. Therefore, you have to be someone evil and wicked, planted by someone we hate, aka Catholic Church, to hopefully undermine them somehow in some way.
Yeah. But that's what indoctrination does to you. You're fed, not only are you fed a fake God, but you're fed a fake enemy.
Correct.
One of my favorite memes and things that I often say when I encounter a thread, if you don't believe in God, you're going to hell. I'd be like, okay, the only thing more ridiculous than having an invisible friend is having, or an imaginary friend is having an imaginary enemy.
Yeah.
Well,
literally.
and the thing is, it's not just, and I've said this before in other shows, it's not just religion that causes this stupidity. I mean, I've seen it within the paranormal field, especially with people that think they're psychics. Jay-Z Knight is a good example with the whole Ramtha bullshit. And it's like, the second you even show an inkling of doubt, you are shunned from the paranormal community. I mean, how I lasted as long as I did, even though I, tried to be rational, even though I went off the deep end. But if you don't accept their indoctrination, I mean, they throw you out like garbage. And it's the same. I mean, you have that indoctrination is the same within the paranormal field. It's any of your new age religions. It's in any religion, and it just doesn't necessarily have to be a religion per se. And that's, I think, one of the things that snapped me out of it with the paranormal bullshit was that I realized, or I saw the correlation between indoctrination into a actual religion and indoctrination into the supernatural bullshit. It's like, it's the same. And that's why they're so dangerous. And you see it with a lot of your new age people, like Deepak Chopra. I mean,
yeah.
It's
case in point. I mean,
it's tribalism at the end of the day.
Tribalism.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right. Especially when you've got them, demonizing, because there's millions and millions of Catholics out there who, yes, they're equally as deluded as INC people, but they're demonizing this entire group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to imagine that they were kind of like that with any other religious denomination. Like, they just had a special hate for the Catholics.
Correct.
I mean, if you said, "Oh, I met a new friend and you're Hindu," they would probably be like, "Oh, don't listen to that." Right? Like, they were.
No, you're 100% right. They also believe that or at least they're taught that every other person outside the church is either evil, deluded, or wicked. That's just how they are. Is that everyone outside the church just goes out and does drugs and just has sex with random people every single night, and the weirdest fears and paranoia you'd ever hear from people. It's ridiculous. And I've had to actually tell people, like, nope, you're talking about my family. I'm not going to allow that to happen. So I've had to call people on that too. But it's because they're so insulated that they don't even know better.
Well,
it's what they're taught.
Islam is very similar in that respect. They're taught that people who, and they're a little softer, and it's not just somebody who's not a Muslim. It's more of somebody who doesn't believe in God. I mean, they think marginally higher of a Christian or a Jew, say.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody who doesn't believe in God, they're just taught that we're total animalistic freaks who can't control themselves with anything, and that we'll just rape and murder and anything all the time, and it's ridiculous. But they're taught to fear people, and especially, well, actually, depending on the sect, but a lot of Muslims are taught to fear Jews. And I've had a couple of my ex-Muslim friends tell me how freaked out. Well, Ali Rizvi famously tells the story a lot. Well, he tells it in his book, actually, how even as an ex-Muslim, the first time he met a Jew was very, like, he had this gut reaction because he had been taught for so many years that Jews were evil and nasty and you didn't want to be around a Jew. And then when he finally met one, he was like, well, it's just a normal person. Like, he was having a nice conversation and then they came up somehow they were Jewish.
Yeah.
And he had this visceral reaction and then had to go back later and say, look, I'm sorry, I was taught to fear you guys and I didn't mean to. Like, he didn't say anything terrible. He just kind of, recoiled and tried to end the conversation.
Yeah, it's a reflex.
Yeah, yeah. And he felt really awful about it afterwards because he's like, it's just a person. I was having a decent conversation with the guy before I found out he was Jewish, and there's no reason why that should change because he's Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And just this whole idea that any of these people are going to be this horrible danger to you. It's ridiculous.
Well, it goes back to that one thing about where if you don't have God, no matter what your version of God is, that you're going to go out and rape and pillage and murder. So you have to have God so you don't do these things. It's just like when you ask a Christian, well, if you stop believing in God, does that mean you're going to murder your wife? Oh, probably. It's like, oh, fuck. Get me out of here.
Well, and it was weird because when I was at the last Reason rally, there was a bunch of Ray Comfort's ilk over there. Yes. And me and my buddy got into a conversation with one of them. And my friend, who was just trying to find common ground, with the guy, said, what, let's figure out something, that we can both agree on. Obviously, we know that, we're probably good people, that we're, we wouldn't just go out, like you said, rape and pillage just because, whether or not a God exists or not, because, we know that we're both good people. And he just straight up goes, nope, that's not the case. He's like, I'm like, what do you mean? Without God, we would always just rape and pillage because that's who we are. And my friend goes, wait a minute. Are you really telling us that you would just go out and just rape random people if you didn't have God or in the Bible? He goes, yeah, with a straight face. And we just take a step back like, whoa. So
you're like, yeah, okay, we don't want to convince you that God is fake.
Yeah, right. You and that's what we told him. I said, you stay in church all day. You never leave Christianity, and we're gonna walk this way.
Oh, damn. I was really hungover that morning, and I didn't get down to the mall till about 11 a.m. So, and I was really bummed because I actually wanted to try and engage with Ray Comfort because I knew he was long gone by the time I got there, which really bummed me out, but oh well. We went and bugged some other screeching Christians later on.
Nice.
After they'd all been exiled over to that other side of the park. There was a guy, you may have even seen him. He was a guy wearing a neon shirt with one of those big professionally printed banners. And he had a megaphone and he was and a bunch of us went over and engaged him sort of in rapid fire sessions.
Right.
He was such a douchebag though. He was like, you're just gonna burn in hell. And we're like, no, we're not. Stop being a dick.
I tried having a conversation. I didn't try having a conversation with people who were just shouting at us. I tried, I was looking for the guy who was just kind of standing there and not really doing anything. I'm like, well, right. He may have something to say, but he doesn't want to be out that crazy person. So I tried talking to them. And the interesting thing that I found is these people have a very weird, horrible self-image where I try even telling people, well, I think you're a good person. You didn't do anything wrong. And they would all say, nope, I'm a terrible person. I'm a horrible, sinful person who doesn't deserve anything. I'm like, well, that's kind of depressing.
Well,
Yeah,
when I was in recovery, the first time when I was first diagnosed with bipolar, I was still more of an agnostic by then, but it was like within months of dumping the whole religious bullshit that I'm a sinner and worthless, yada yada. And it was months, and I was like, oh, I'm a good person. It was like night and day. I mean, that's what you're taught from day one, from the second you're hatched out of your mom's womb, or in my case, out of an egg. I was adopted. But, I mean, you're taught from day one that you're going to hell, you're a sinner, you're a bad person. I mean, when I was showing symptoms in college, but long before I was diagnosed, I'm a cutter, and I used to self-injure, and it was like, oh, you're not praying hard enough, you're a bad Christian, you're not spiritual enough, you don't do this right. It's like, when you're told that day in and day out, yeah, you're gonna have a really shitty self-image.
Yeah.
But it's like as soon as I dumped that bullshit, I won't say it was smooth sailing, but it was like the improvement was night and day for me. I mean, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear other people say the same thing.
Oh, correct. And that's exactly how this church or how INC treats you too, is they'll constantly beat you down and say how horrible of a person you are. Even like the people, like the ministers will talk to you as saying that you're a bad person and that you need to fix it right now. And by fixing it, means you have to get an office or something like that, because otherwise you're a horrible person. And these people have such horrible self-images of themselves because they're so full of fear of being seen as bad Christians to their administration.
Do they have the expectation that everybody's supposed to get a, quote, church job like they do with Mormons?
It's not an expectation, but they do push it heavily.
Okay.
So,
because I know in with the Mormon church, they do it sort of as busy work and make it so that the faithful are so busy that they just don't have time to question anything.
No, it's more or less they kind of just, it's that social pressure. So it's not like you have to, but one of the first, after I was baptized, one of the first questions like, oh, are you going to join the choir now? I'd love to have you in the choir, or hey, I have this position in my financial office. You want to come join that? Like, that's what they'll do. It's not that you have to, but they pressure you right away to do so.
It's like, we've got another warm body who's been baptized. Let's put him to work. Yeah,
quite literally. So, and I don't remember if I told you guys this story or not. You might find this funny, kind of closing things out.
Yep.
So I was always kind of in trouble with church because I just laugh when I find something funny. I don't mean to. I don't try to sound disrespectful. It's just the nature of who I am. So if someone says something that's really stupid or funny, I'm going to bust out. And a lot of what these ministers will say, because they're so diluted from reality, they'll say things and not even realize how ridiculous those things actually are. I remember a couple of times where I got in trouble because the guy went on this whole thing about how women shouldn't wear short shorts anymore. And I remember him saying something along the lines of, these women are just trying to spread their legs out and, show off them with their short shorts. And even some of the, have you heard like these micro shorts? Like they're in this go like right up to their thigh. I mean, don't get me wrong. They look really good, but it's so bad. And I bust out laughing, and I immediately got reprimanded for it because I was being immature in church. But
so when they reprimand, is that just like a stern talking to you? Like there's not really anything.
Like you have to go talk to the minister because you're disrespectful and things like that. I remember another time where he was talking about being proud of your faith, and you need to be able to share your faith with others and not be afraid of it. And I remember him saying, "Man, you guys, I am just so proud to be one of God's chosen people. You know, it just fills me up with so much joy that I want to go out to the rest of the world. I just want to stand up, stand on my desk, and just shout, MILF." Man, I love faith.
Yeah, that's not what anybody else.
I'm like, what? Are you kidding me right now? But like, this is, they have no concept of what reality is, what general rules of thumb are, and
I would have paid good money to see him stand on a box in the street corner and yell MILF and see who
oh my god, and just his look on his face, that he was so proud when he said that. It was so ridiculous. But
you know you're sheltered when you think your short form is cool reasons, but definitely not.
correct. So
Oh. Well, we're about ready to finish up here, I guess. So, Joe, anything else that you want to add or talk about before we head out?
yeah, so as of right now, I am the main guy ahead of a group called Milwaukee Humanists. We're a brand new group trying to reach out and trying to grow in the Milwaukee area. We're also putting on a conference called the Brew City Benefit on April 7th. It's a day-long conference. We're going to have it. We found a very liberal Presbyterian church, like a landmark in Milwaukee, that's going to partner with us and do this really cool event. We have Seth Andrews coming. We have Alex Jules, Thomas Smith, Callie Wright, Aaron Raw, Alondra Raw, and another local guy, Jason Love, who's going to be talking about autism awareness. It's all about humanitarian efforts, really trying to dive deep into social issues and different subjects. There's going to be alcohol there because, you know, we're Milwaukee. Duh. Yeah. Really, we did have some really cool additions as well. We have Dan Barker and Andy Laurie Gaylor coming now. We also do have two comedians coming up from Nashville that will be here to entertain us for the evening as well. So Deb has the link, so you can find out information about the tickets, the group, all on mkehumanist.com. So check us out.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I was thinking earlier in the year that I would only have, because ReasonCon is my go-to conference and they're going to do every other year. So thinking, oh, well, you know, I only have one thing I really want to go to this year. And all of a sudden, there's like 4 of them.
Oh, I know. It's ridiculous. There's so many at once.
And I can't do that.
No, it's okay.
We're going to Nashville next month for sure for NanoCon. And then I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I could go back to Milwaukee. Then we had David Silverman on.
Right.
We were talking all about Oklahoma City, and I'm like, fuck, sorry. And then we had Esther Palmer on a couple of weeks ago, who told me all about the Alberta Secular Conference, where she's going to be speaking. And I'm like, oh, fuck, that'd be great too. And I've never been to Alberta. And he just decided that my husband and I usually take a big motorcycle trip every year. And
nice.
We decided earlier this weekend that we're going to go to Las Vegas and the Sturgis bike rally and
nice
Grand Canyon. And I've never been. Milwaukee is actually the most west I've ever been.
Oh, well, if you ever get a chance, though, you need to come to Milwaukee for one of the Harley Davidson anniversaries.
That would be cool. We drive an BMW though.
Oh,
yeah,
that'll be fine. Who cares?
They I'm not sure they would want to see that. It was like, oh, a couple Canucks on a beach. What the fuck? We're like, hi, can we join? It'd be like Weird Al's.
Yeah, right.
Oh shit! Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Joe. And
thank you.
I've been blaming you for the time slot since last week. So, Beth, I'm just going to mute you for a sec because that echo is really bad. She's like, oh, fuck. But yeah, I'm glad we could come back and talk about this particular cray. I'm curious now to find out how much of this is around here, because the one video I mentioned with the black guy, he was representing Toronto, which makes sense. Toronto is a really big cosmopolitan area, so every country is represented over there. So that doesn't surprise me, but I'd be curious to know if they make it out this way or not. So,
well, I think I can't remember where it was, but somewhere in the article it did say there was like, it showed how many locales were in Canada for INC. Oh yeah, see, it lists 39 places of worship across Canada, including 11 in Alberta and 10 in Ontario and BC or British Columbia.
Now that's interesting that there's 11 in Alberta, because we were talking on Holy Crap last night about how Alberta's kind of our center of religious nut jobs. So,
okay.
Nice. Alberta is kind of like Texas.
Okay, got it.
It's where the oil comes from, and it's where all the religious nuts go.
Okay.
Well, most of them. I mean, we have some in every province, but Alberta kind of has a bit of a concentration, which is where the secular festival is going to be. So
nice.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel bad because I told my husband at the beginning of the year, I was like, oh, I think there's only going to be Nashville that I want to go to this year. And I'm like, yeah, so.
So
oh, well.
But nice.
And, yeah. So, Beth, why don't you tell us where we can find you?
I'm going to drop one little hint first, and Deb and Joe heard this before the show, and this is to any theists out there. Do not offer a person who has a mental illness, i.e. bipolar in my case, to go off themselves, because I will ask you for the gun. And I will use it. Okay? Don't threaten that I'm going to burn in hell, or don't tell me, or any person for that matter, to die or go kill themselves, because I will do it. That's to my little troll out there that thought he had me. He ran away screaming. Well, I don't know if he was screaming, but he ran away anyways. But easiest way to find me is Dune998 on Twitter. That connects to my blog, Havoc and Chaos. And I posted another 40 stories of priest diddling kids and other church abuses. So much fun. I still have another 10 or 15 saved up that I got to get posted tonight before it starts all over again tomorrow. I'm also on YouTube and on Google, but I haven't been very active on YouTube. I am working on something, but I keep falling into rabbit holes again.
Funny that.
Yeah, it's like, as I said, I was delving into the Trinity stuff, and that's kind of taking me on all these really weird side trips, but gets into the whole church history thing. But you can also find me on Facebook. If you send me a friend request, please say it's related to the show, or I will most likely ignore you if we don't have common friends. And you can find me under Beth A. Hambridge on all the platforms.
Awesome.
Nice.
And of course, you can find me on Holy Crap, the vlogcast, which is Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. So that was earlier this morning. We did show 200, and Shujin got really drunk. It was kind of funny because he was having difficulty pronouncing words by the end of the show, and we sort of questioned his wisdom on that because our guest was a psychiatrist. So like, is this the right episode to do? Okay, whatever, Shu, knock yourself out. Not literally, please. But no, it was a lot of fun. And that's, you can find that at holycrapthevlogcast.com. And I just released a new episode of Full Quranic on Friday. So you can find that at www.fullquranic.com. And this time around, Allah finally gives us a couple more rules to follow. And then he gets a bit pervy. And yeah, then we start hearing about repetitive shit again because he's really good at repeating himself over and over and over. Interestingly, I've if you remember when we talked to Apostate Prophet a couple of weeks ago, he talked about having been a Sufi Muslim. I came across a Sufi Muslim in the Great Debate community the other day, and yeah, that's an interesting experience, let me tell you. Sufis are kind of the hippies of the Muslim community. I'm waiting to hear the Muslim version of crystals and Reiki, although she hasn't quite got there yet. Basically, anything in the Quran that might cause harm to someone, that means you're reading it wrong. It's bad interpretation. Doesn't, and don't ever take the Quran literally. It's not meant to be literal, ever.
Okay.
So we'll see. But yeah, fullchronic.com. Check that out. New episodes. We're up to episode 12 already. And we're at 50 verses or surahs in the Quran, but they're all different sizes. So for instance, episode 1, we went through 22 chapters because they're all little tiny. So, but we're making headway. So there's that. Yeah, I think other than that, that about does it for this week. Next week, we're going to be talking with Patrick Horst, who is one of the organizers of NanoCon over in Nashville. And we're going to hear about the conference and all the cool stuff that's going to be going on there. So we're looking forward to that. And he is also involved with Sunday Assembly over in Nashville as well. So Patrick's a good egg. He does some good workshops that I've seen before, and he's a good speaker. So we'll be talking to him next week at the normal time, Monday at 7:30 p.m. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
That's okay. In the last couple of weeks, I mentioned the Apostate Prophet. We had to do Thursday afternoon for him. And I think David Silverman was a Wednesday. So, but people are starting to get used to this, like, pick a day sort of thing. It's all right. So anyway, folks, until next week, I will leave you all with the human creed for mankind, and we will see you then. Whoops, wrong one. Damn it.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs, that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.